Electronic Arts. Now there's a funny little company, and a funny little story too, honestly. See, EA, in case you don't remember, which I'd almost be surprised if you didn't, was once the great Satan of video gaming. Quite literally, they could do no right. They seemingly, emphatically, in fact, embrace every single negative and predatory monetization strategy that gaming came up with, one after the other, and then somehow managed to make them all worse. It was kind of fantastic. Like, they seem to actively strangle every piece of quality they came across. They had the reverse Midas touch. They could merely gaze upon a successful studio and it would wither and die on the vine. And yet today, EA isn't really, well, all that negatively famous anymore. Because, well, a lot of their negative business practices are now, industry standard. Yeah. The reason why EA isn't the Great Satan anymore is because everything the Great Satan pioneered is now just business as usual. God help us all. But to give EA some credit here, they have actually become a better company. Now, whether they've truly become a better company, or if we have merely gotten ourselves a bigger enemy in the form of the woke menace, that can absolutely be debated at length. But nevertheless, EA is no longer the universal bad guy. So Disney apparently angling to buy EA is an interesting proposition. So we know for a fact that EA a while ago went sniffing around for a buyer, because EA, economically speaking, is doing kind of, it's not doing terribly, it's not doing awfully, but it's not doing amazingly either. We covered just the other day, in fact, that EA was laying off 6% of their employees, which totals some 750 or 800 people, I think. A lot of people getting let go. This was met by general outrage and like, how come you're firing people? You're profitable. And, well, yeah, they kind of are, but, well, here's the thing. EA has something like $2 billion in debt, and that's because, like, 3 years ago or so, I think they had an enormous deficit for 2 or 3 years in a row. EA as a company is only really, like, getting back on its feet. It also had one great year a while ago as well, mind you, when a lot of their big name titles came out, and of course, they are still relying on the old trustworthies like The Sims, for example, which continue to sell like mad, no matter how bullshit its monetization is, because it's primarily bought by an audience that, well, aren't gamers. See, EA is one of very few companies, in fact practically the only company, that has managed to embrace the wider audience. The audience that don't actually play video games, but do play The Sims. But we're getting a bit off track here. What could this possibly mean? Now, Bob Iger himself, the CEO of Disney, is apparently non-committal, and I haven't found any clear suggestions that they're planning this beyond it's been called for. Now, for Disney, this would actually probably be a fairly good move, because so far, Disney has of course been living off their IPs, both in terms of their parks, in their cruises, and in terms of game licensing. This is, in essence, Disney's zombie business. They can't produce anything new these days that can sell worth a half damn, and everything they do sell seem to only damage their brand yet further, and so their only reason for existence and continuing to earn money is stuff that they produced 10, 20, 30 years ago. So obviously the licensing business is profitable too. Now, this is where video games could become very, 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 very useful. EA has always had a little bit of a reputation for licensed shovelware to begin with. Their sports series, for example, is one of the main reasons why they're still above, water, everything considered. And so, having Disney come in and go, hey, we're going to buy you up and we're going to give you Marvel, we're going to give you Disney, and we're going to just let you make tie-ins of this for days. It would benefit EA probably quite a lot to do this, as a lot of the studios under EA's umbrella are, shall we say, mediocre, or very one-track. Their ability to produce something truly new and like, wow, is probably behind them, let's be fair here. But when it comes to taking old properties, revitalizing and remonetizing them, and even to some degree remastering them, well, they've actually proven rather adept at that. And so if they gain access to the entirety of Marvel and Disney's catalog, it could actually work out pretty well. And for Disney's side of things, EA is a proven moneymaker, unlike Disney. Now, again, to be fair, EA has had some very rough years a while ago, but the last 2 or 3 or 4, and especially now that they've already made major cuts to their expenses by firing a large portion of their employees, the company is quite likely to do fairly well for an extended period of time. Especially if they get an enormous amount of fresh IPs pumped right into them. There's no reason to assume that EA would go belly up simply because they got access to a lot of Marvel IPs. Now, for the rest of us, however, the average gamer, is this a good thing? You know, I actually think yes. I unironically think yes, because here's the thing. Now, will this produce a lot of shovelware? Yes, but shovelware doesn't quite have the same smack to it as it used to. The shovelware term used to refer to video games where a movie had come out or something and they stamped the title on it and threw it out the door, and there you go, video game. They were usually mediocre at best, often abject trash, and were given the name because they were thrown out of the door to meet a very strict deadline coinciding with the release of the movie or whatever, right? But that isn't really necessarily true anymore. With the increases in developmental technology, you can make a relatively competent video game surprisingly quickly, especially on a decent budget. And, well, frankly, people don't necessarily expect that much from a movie tie-in game. It's easy money, really, for a lot of these companies, especially EA, who have more or less specialized in this thing particularly. And when you're looking at stuff like Disney, oh god, the amount of money they could earn in just like children's video games alone would be absurd. Especially if they do what Disney do best, not making something new, but rather recreating what has already existed. As for us, well, we're not going to care about that. We're not going to care about the movie tie-ins. We're not going to care about the video games for 12-year-olds. But what we are perhaps going to care about is the fact that Disney is now looking for successful sellers. Their entire portfolio right now revolves around resurrecting things that are already dead, or monetizing them. Well, it just so happens that EA is sitting on an actual literal goddamn mountain of old IPs in desperate need of remastering. See where I'm going with this? It could actually be a bit... it could be a match made in Necromancer heaven. Now, ironically, like, you can see a great resurgence of some of the old strategy games, for example. EA's, the sheer amount of studios that they have at some point killed means that they in turn are actually sitting on a lot of very valuable property that could be remastered fairly easily, fairly quickly, and relatively effectively. For example, let's just take the first random article I found on Google, right? Dead Space, Dungeon Keeper, Ultima, oh god, Ultima, Wing Commander, Jesus Christ, I'd love that, Oddworld, Need for Speed, Syndicate, The Simpsons, Jesus, really? Titanfall, people have been begging for another one there, but it didn't sell, so we'll see. Road Rash, Skate, Theme Park, absolutely. Star Wars Battlefront, oh god, yeah, the Battlefront series. Burnout, Sim City, oh boy, yeah, well, in a market with Cities Skyline, that's going to be difficult, but possible. Magic Carpet, Mass Effect, absolutely. Fight Night, Command and Conquer, yes! Now, there is a series just begging for a good Necromancer to come along and just revitalize all of it. Particularly, oh god, Generals, with its kind of mildly spicy sense of humor, would do amazeballs in the current environment of rising anti-wokeism. Medal of Honor. Now, the last attempt to resurrect Medal of Honor did not work out very well, but honestly, that was more because they tried to make it into something it wasn't. Go back into the good old steps. Nobody's making World War II games anymore. Embrace it. Like, this is a list of absolute gold for Disney here. Like, they could... I mean, hell, Dungeon Keeper, for example. If they were to announce a Dungeon Keeper game, people would buy it. Just straight up, just from its legacy alone. Command & Conquer, people would buy it for its legacy alone. Dead Space, hell, with the success of the Dead Space remake, right? Well, you got 2 other games to remake, easy enough. Plus, if you actually return to the roots of Dead Space, what made Dead Space 1 good, and what they tried apparently to recreate in Callisto Protocol but failed, well, again, you've got an excellent opportunity. I genuinely think that this might actually be a pretty good thing for both parties. One exists to monetize the shit out of everything to the point of predatory behavior, but aforementioned predatory behavior has become industry standard at this point, so the negative kind of doesn't exist. And the other lives solely off old dead IPs. Yeah, no, this could actually be rather brilliant. Well, I didn't expect myself to be cheering for the Necromancer in video games for a while, but here we are. And again, in an era where we seemingly can't create anything new worth a damn, and Disney most of all, this could just be the way forward. And we gotta run. We have to walk, English, before one can run. So before we get back to the age of innovation and good video game production, especially getting out of a lengthy and painful woke era, maybe a half-decade or so of remasters of old beloved classics, so as to, well, in essence, teach a new generation of developers and programmers what a good video game actually is. It could actually be a good thing. We saw with Dawn of War 3, for example, the people there had no idea what they were doing. Company of Heroes 3 is shaping up to be better, but again, the developers didn't know what they were doing. All of the old veterans are dead and gone, or making their own studios. The people on the floor no longer have the wherewithal, the know-it-all, the experience, the ability, the drive to produce games of this quality anymore. And maybe working on some of the old greats might re-inspire that spark. We're dreaming at this point, but I have heard more ridiculous theories, haven't you? Anywho, EA plus Disney. All bless the Necromancers. Till next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching. I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.